I hope this video or live stream finds you doing well. The very first thing I'm going to be talking about, the only thing I'm going to be talking about, is do you have free will? Do you have as much free will as you think that you have? First of all, I want to go ahead and be upfront with you guys. I've been in some study and some stuff that is something that is extremely dark. While I will say that it does not oppose God, it's not a Sunday school lesson either. Real knowledge isn't light, fluffy, or full of joy. It is heavy, it's dark, it's hell bent. And God has had me enter that through those realms since the day of my birth. So now we're going into free mind, to the free will. There are two parts of our mind. There is the central mind, that's the logical part. That's the part that says, let's think about this a little bit more before you do it or before you eat it. This is only looking at things from the logical point. The second is our peripheral mind. This is the seat of our emotions. Most people think with their peripheral minds. Even I will admit I at times do that, which makes sales very easy for people who are into sales and know how to do it. Let me give you couple extra little examples. Prime Minister Churchill, standing on the brink of disaster, made a speech in 1944 that is now considered the words that won the war. He understood that logic alone wouldn't win the war, but belief could. It was the belief of citizens that could help, and soldiers that could help win the war. Logically speaking, England didn't have a hope of hell in winning the war. But emotions and beliefs did win the war. The blood, toil, and tears of Churchill's speech brought people together through emotional part of their brain, and they won the war. This was all based 100% on belief and emotions. The Christian religion, big government, and businesses have the power to use their power to manipulate you. They do it by using your emotions against you. I am not here to sell you anything, but to tell you the absolute truth. I want to talk about another manipulator. Edward Bernays was a master manipulator. He is also known as the father of public relations. He understood that the product was never about the product. It was about the story. In the 1920s, women smoking was taboo. In 1929, at an event, Edward Bernays hired women to march using the cigarette as a torch. The message became clear. The cigarette was no longer just a cigarette. It was about women becoming free and stopping oppression. Sales skyrocketed, leading to the women's liberation movement. Through marketing and product placement, big businesses have you buying their products while you think it's your idea to buy the products. The truth is, the product chooses you. And I am going to be further explaining that. Let me see here. I'm just taking a look at one little thing here. Okay. All right. So I am going to further explain that now. Whenever you go into a store and you go to the cereal aisle, remember, these people have already marketed these products. There is like fruit Captain Crunch, Fruit Loops, Frosted Flakes, and there is other cereals. Those cereals that, for the most part, are unhealthy, those are up where your eyes can see them. Now, these people already studied colors and the combination of colors and the characters to tap into people's psyche. And so when you go in, you think, oh, I got Frosted Flakes. Boy, did I ever deserve that. Yes, you do, because it chose you. You didn't choose the product chose you. And all the while, you're sitting there thinking, I chose the product. No, you didn't. Each of these advertisements, all of the colors have been studied so that it would draw people in. If it was really you that chose it, what you would do is you flip that box over, see how much calories it had, how much sugar it had, and there's no way that a clear thinking, sounding person would ever buy cereal that's extremely unhealthy and that it's almost pure sugar. You would have never have done that. What you did was you went in and you grabbed the box and you said, this, I'm not buying just the product. You're buying an experience. The experience being a sugar rush, but still an experience. You're buying a story. You're not buying the cereal. That healthy cereal, well, that's way down at your feet so that you won't notice it. I make good decisions for the most part. I buy oatmeal. Now, some would say, well, if you're making good decisions, you should have bought generic. Well, that's mostly true. But even I'll confess that when I go in to buy oatmeal, I go out and I buy the container that I like. That's Quaker oatmeal. I buy that Quaker oatmeal, and the generic may be as good as the brand stuff. That's possibly true. I'm not going to dispute it. But since I feel safe to buy it, I buy it. And let me give you a little part of that conditioning. My parents conditioned me that it tastes really good if you mix peanut butter in it and sugar. So guess how I eat my oatmeal? Yep, lots of peanut butter and lots of sugar. Because my parents conditioned me that way. It wasn't out of my free will. It's just I was conditioned. So I'm even willing to admit that I sometimes give up my free will for the conditioned. It's easy. And so when I'm even willing to admit it, when it comes to some of the food I eat, it's because of conditioning. Someone planted a idea into my mind. I tasted the idea and then I stuck with it all the days of my life. So I love Christian people, and that will never change. The number one truth in Christianity is that Christ is the way to salvation. However, Catholicism and modern day Christianity are often based on manipulation and making it easy to be lazy. Catholicism and modern day Christianity are designed by geniuses for lazy people. The truth about our current Bible is that in the days of the Apostle Shaul, or as Christians may know as the Apostle Paul, there was no New Testament. They were other scrolls being taught from, such as the Book of Enoch. Some claim that the Book of Enoch cannot be determined when and by whom it was written. They are correct. But to place it in the Bible, not to place it in the Bible and use that as a good reason to not place it in the Bible, I'm going to bust that up with one question. When in the hell did our heaven, or when in the hell did our holy, righteous, and perfect Heavenly Father owe his sheep an explanation? If the real truth be known, no one, and I literally mean no one, can answer that question rationally. Our Heavenly Father owes us nothing and yet has graciously given us his one and only salvation. Christianity absolutely started with the Catholic Church, which was started by a genius called Emperor Constantine. We, the Jewish people, wanted to be a part of the conversation at the First Council of Nicaea, but we were essentially told to go to hell. Then the nation of Rome created their own Bible. The nation of Rome was split in two halves, the western part into Latin and the eastern part into Greek. The Roman Catholic Church's Pope and leaders have always been about power, control, and greed. They believe that when the Pope is doing his job, he becomes equal with God. This is pure blasphemy. No one except Christ is equal with God. Christ can say he is equal with God because he perfectly follows the Father's will. If anyone thinks that the Jewish people and I will believe a bunch of books from the Roman Catholic Church, you must be joking. The New Testament was written by us, the Jewish people. The problem is that it went through the hands of people who were not and are not even close to being as kosher as Jewish leaders. The Catholic priest and everyone who handles the cross are handling an extremely unkosher symbol. We, the Jewish people, understand and acknowledge death, but we reflect upon life. Life in itself is kosher. The second problem is that the Catholic Church leaders has always been about control, power, and greed. Emperor Constantine had all the names removed and translated to Western names, such as Miriam to Mary, Rushalayim to Jerusalem, and there's a lot more that I will not go into now. The number one rule of translation is that you never translate the name of people and places. Emperor Constantine did this to take the Jewishness out of the Bible. And we, the Jewish people, are putting that Jewishness back into the Bible. Why would we, the Jewish people, believe anything that the New Testament says when we're not part of the conversation at the First Council of Nicaea under Emperor Constantine? We are Jewish, not stupid. If we don't see it logically explained in the Torah or through the Torah, we don't believe it. If I can hear a Torah perspective on what Christ taught and what is taught in the letters, I will listen to it. But it must match written Torah or be minimally explained through the Talmuds. Christianity claims that God made a mistake in Torah and gave the new rules to the Apostle Paul, or as I know him, the Apostle Shaul. Let's think about this. If God made a mistake giving us 613 laws in Torah, how did he not make a mistake in giving Christianity's 1,050 laws that can be grouped in 800 headings? Judaism has only 613 laws to obey. There's good news for this lazy generation. Of these 613 laws, there are less than 300 that must be obeyed since there is no temple and we are not in the land of Israel. Does it sound logical to claim that 1,050 laws are good, but less than 300 laws are wrong? How much less? How can less than 300 laws be binding, but 1,050 are not? The theory appeals to those who want to feel safe. There's no logic in that kind of thinking. None. It is illogical, and I will explain it like this. There is a verse in the Bible, and it's in Proverbs 22:6. Before I get into this, I want you guys to know King Solomon was not a Christian, okay? Not a Christian at all. When you take the writings of King Solomon and say, oh, this is for Christians too. Yeah, can we sit down and talk about replacement theology? It was never meant for Christians too. It was meant for the Jewish people. It was written by a Jewish king for the Jewish people who were in a Jewish religion. Okay? Not a Christian. He was far from it. If he was Christian, he wouldn't have had over 1,000 wives and concubines. So we can erase the Christian theology there. It says, train up a child in the way he should go. So he was talking about Judaism, not Christianity. When we talk about raising children, we're talking about actually conditioning them. And a lot of people have a lot of hard time getting over that conditioning. And it's easier to just go with the flow than it is to think outside of the box. This is why that a lot of Christians have a hard time going from Christianity or to Messianic Judaism, is because they're comfortable with that emotional thinking. And believe me, they will fight tooth and nail for that emotional thinking that's going on inside their mind, instead of taking a very logical look at this and saying, geez, maybe I have been conditioned. You've been conditioned. Trust me. I've got family members that have absolutely been conditioned, and they won't believe anything else, and that's just the way it goes. I sit back and I'm cool with it. But we've got to understand, for those who have went from Christianity over to Messianic Judaism, that these are people who have a hard time with change. We need to be gracious to them and understand they're just going along with their conditioning. Give me 1 second here. I've got to get something to drink here. Okay. So, when people are being raised, they're being conditioned. That does take away from free will. So again, you've got to wonder, how much free will do we have? Now, here's the thing I want to talk to you guys about feelings. This is a hypothetical scenario. I'm hoping it's never happened, but it's hypothetical for me. When we have two trains on the same track going over 100 miles per hour, one train is coming from Los Angeles and the other train is coming from New York City. Now, everyone feels safe on these two trains that are going to crash in St. Louis. When the train crashes, where their feelings matter, I would put out in front of you that their feelings don't matter, and because they were feeling safe, it may make them easier targets for a collision at over 200 miles per hour. My life experiences have proven to me that hell comes to those who feel safe. I'm also going to go ahead and show you guys a little something about with this conditioning. And this is the very dangerous part of conditioning. I knew a Messianic Jewish congregation in Canton, Ohio, whose Messianic pastor believed in and taught pre-rapture theology. Within about 2 years, the congregation no longer existed. I know because I went there on a Saturday at 10 a.m. when their normal services was at, and no one was there. I talked to the pastor there where we once held the services. He told me that the congregation no longer was in existence. I later found out that this pastor and his wife got divorced. Let this be a warning to everyone who if you're in a congregation of, well, we have Christian, half Jew, placate to everybody, be warned. That's a very dangerous line to ride. A pastor did it that I know of, and he reaped the consequences. That is a very dangerous thing to do. God warned the Jewish people about mixing other religions in Judaism, and he warned about getting involved in other religions. It is in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 2 through 4. In the New International Version, it states, "Do not add to what I have commanded you, and do not subtract from it, but keep the commandments of the Lord your God that I give you. You saw with your own eyes what the Lord did to Baal Peor. The Lord your God destroyed from among you everyone who followed the Baal of Peor. The Lord your..." Okay, wait a minute here. "But all of you who held fast to the Lord your God are still alive today. God can and will destroy those who seek to add or subtract from Torah." We were absolutely warned about that. And oh no, we can do that. No, you can't. Not even in the slightest. We are not to mix up with any other religion. I go strictly by Judaism, by written Torah, no matter what the New Testament has to say. I have come to know our Jewish Messiah without the help of the New Testament. I have heard Christians say, "Sometimes I wonder if I am saved," only to have someone to respond with, "Just believe. It is Satan getting into you." Well, excuse me, sorry about that. As a former Christian, I too had doubts about my salvation. Now I can rely on the knowledge of the Torah and the fact that I listen to the words of God very, very closely. I am not perfect, but no one is perfect. But I give it my best shot. I do not have to doubt my relationship with our Heavenly Father because I can look at the miracles that have happened in my life because of following God's instructions in the Torah. I do not need to ask someone if I'm saved. And I don't have to get the response of just believe. I'm not asking people if I'm saved. I'm flat out telling you, with all that I am, I know I'm saved. I have not had to doubt my salvation in 3.5 years, coming close, starting to come close to 4. And that you can take to the bank. Hinduism cannot tell you much about Christianity because, well, they're not Christians. They undoubtedly know of the Christian faith, but they have no experience in Christianity, so the knowledge is limited. It is the same way with Christianity and Judaism. Christians cannot get to know the covenants of God on a personal experience because they do not consider themselves to be part of the covenants of God. They have no personal experience in the covenants. Christians can only get so close to God, and then there's a warning that goes off in their minds saying to stay away from the laws of God. What I want everyone is for us all to be close to God. If you want an extremely deep relationship with God, you will get to know and live by his laws. When God offers to us in his laws are peace and wholeness, I have no doubt that God will not work in your life the same way that he has worked in my life. However, when God starts really working in your life, I can tell you that it will be literally mind blowing. Studying God, getting to know God. I'm telling you, from a Jewish rabbi, I can learn more things in one Shabbat, in 1 hour, than I have ever learned in Christianity within 10 years. God reveals only so much of himself to Christians, but he does reveal a lot more in Judaism. There is no way to explain the feeling of seeing God work in your life. I have seen things that the only way I can explain it was that it was God, it was a God thing. God at different times delivered me from extreme pain when I had no medicine with me. I have seen God transform my personality. I have seen God give me a heart of flesh. And I am going to share with you guys a little fact. And I have got all the documentations that I will ever need to prove what I say is true. And I'm going to get back right to it. Hanukkah in 2023 started on the evening of December 7th. It was on December 8th that I bought my 2022 Toyota Highlander. On the first day of Hanukkah. The only problem I've ever had with that truck is that there was when they were making the hose for the window shield wiper fluids, it became something happened with it and they had to replace it. That's the most that's ever happened. Everything else has been just regular maintenance. So in order for everything worked itself out so that I would receive this SUV on the first day of Hanukkah. You talk about having a mind-blowing experience It was like there is nothing else that it can be except God. This has to be a God thing. So when you continuously have so many of those experiences, give me 1 second here. When you have so many of those things, and that you cannot say, well, it's just a God thing, it has a tendency to humble a person, or at least it did me. And having to take a look at, I've got to be making the right decisions because everything's coming out so good. And so when you see that just time after time, you have extreme pain going away just because that someone prayed for you. I mean, it's humbling. So we don't have as much free will as probably what a lot of people want to think they have. And even I will admit, having known where these strings are at, I sometimes don't play it out, say, yeah, whatever. Sometimes it's not so much. I'm willing to start fighting against those strings real hard. So that is part. Andrew Tate calls it the matrix. He is not wrong. We are conditioned that our kids are supposed to just go to school to learn. The real truth about your kids going to school is to learn how to be employees. And they start conditioning them at the very young age of 5 years old. And what do most of them do? Most of them grow up and become employees. Not a bad plan on their end. Yeah, problem is I no longer make a good employee, especially with my disabilities. So the next time that you're doing something, is it because you were conditioned to do it? Was it because that the marketers really decided to sell you a product that they liked? Or was it of your own free will? This is the thing that you must figure out for yourself. But if you thought up to this point of, I have complete and total 100% free will. Yeah. Nope. Not as much as what you'd like to think. I am studying these things. So I'm willing to confess, yeah, you know what? I've been conditioned for this, that, and the other, and I've been manipulated to this. Yep. Well, is that right? But you know what? I'm taking away those strings too. And that leaves me with being a very open and a very honest individual. And when I get done with all the things that's going on in my life, yeah, I made a prediction about, the preachers cussing. Yeah, well, that's because some of them who are just looking after their own back wallets is going to be mad because I'm taking away their money. Kind of like what's going on with the bureaucrats in the federal government. They're all just having a time of their life. I mean, they're just jumping up and down. I think we've entered a time that God's going to have a lot of people jumping up and down. But, it is what it is. Nothing I can do about it. I only know the truth and I hand the truth to you. What do you do with it? It's up to you. Well, there's nothing more I can say about this little free will thing. I love y'all. God bless.